News Channel 5. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. You always hype me up real well. Let me thank you for that. Thank you so much.
I feel like Steve Harvey, and this is like the sports kings and queens of comedy, and I'm tasked with bringing all the big stars out. So I got to make sure that you get your proper cred, man, because you are a woman that holds it down in the city of Cleveland. All three sports, you're very vast in it, and you always are on the go and all the grind. So it's always important to give people their flowers, man, while they still above ground.
I appreciate that. You have no idea.
That's Cameron Justice from News Channel 5 in Cleveland. And if you follow the Browns beat, you know she rarely does interviews like this. She's the one asking questions at press conferences, not answering them. But when she does speak, people listen because she's not in the business of selling rumors or generating clicks. She's there every single day, at every practice, in every press conference room. And right now, with the Browns tearing down Kevin Stefanski's coaching staff piece by piece, she's one of the few voices cutting through the noise with actual facts. Because let's be real, the Browns' rumor mill has been spinning out of control. One day it's Malik Willis becoming the starting quarterback. The next day it's Jameis Winston. Then reporters are saying Dorian Thompson-Robinson is QB1, while Myles Garrett and Amari Cooper are telling anyone who'll listen that DTR is their guy. It's chaos. And in that chaos, Cameron Justice is providing something rare in sports media right now: clarity without the hype.
Well, I think, first of all, you want to have somebody who has experience, right? And you don't, that's a hard one to promote within. It happens sometimes, but you want somebody that has done it. And Todd Monken said that he wants an elite staff. So, you know, he's been on successful teams. He's been around the league for some time, and that's exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that has done it, and he's played. So that's, to have playing experience and coaching experience, it's twofold, I think, for me.
Bubba Ventrone. That's the special teams coordinator they just lost to the Rams. And here's what makes that significant. Ventrone came to Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski's stamp of approval. He was part of that original coaching infrastructure that was supposed to turn the Browns into contenders. Instead, Cleveland's special teams unit became a liability in 2024. Missed field goals at critical moments, coverage breakdowns that gave opponents short fields, return game production that ranked in the bottom third of the league. When you're paying Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed and your special teams are costing you field position every week, that's not sustainable. So Todd Monken, now running this operation, went out and hired Byron Storer, different pedigree entirely. Storer played in the league, then coached his way up through multiple successful organizations. He's been a special teams coordinator before. He's produced results before. And he understands what elite special teams execution looks like, because he's been part of teams that actually achieved it. That's the template Monken is following: experience over potential, proven track records over developmental projects. Because the Browns don't have time to develop coaches anymore. They're paying a quarterback $46 million per year. The window isn't opening, it's already here.
Team is going to make it a little bit easier, I think, for them to lay some concepts down, and a player coach always, I think, usually makes it a little bit easier because it's easier to relate. It's like Bubba Ventrone, and Bubba had success as a special teams coordinator, in Indianapolis. It's why he came here. So I think if you can get that kind of productivity, that's what you're looking for out of that unit.
Good morning, Cameron. It's James. The Browns are still looking for a defensive coordinator. Is them wanting to stick to the same system a hindrance to finding a guy maybe that's outside of the organization, or has that not been really a hurdle that they've experienced?
I mean, it certainly could be if you look at what they're trying to do, and that has to come into play, the understanding, the grasp. I asked Jerome Baker at the Greater Cleveland Sports Awards, like, how hard is it to actually run this?
Now we get to the real issue, the defensive coordinator position. And this is where things get complicated. Because Jim Schwartz didn't just leave behind a scheme. He left behind a philosophy, a culture, and a defense that genuinely believed in what they were doing. Listen to how Cameron describes Jerome Baker's response when she asked him about running Schwartz's system without Schwartz. Baker said it's hard, but it's also easy. That's not a contradiction. That's the truth about great coaching systems. The concepts themselves aren't revolutionary. Crash the line. Create chaos up front. Force the quarterback into quick decisions. Make your secondary clean up the mess. Simple in theory. But the execution requires buy-in at a level most defensive coordinators never achieve. Schwartz had that. Players ran through walls for him. They believed in the aggression. They trusted the chaos. And the results spoke for themselves. Cleveland's defense kept them competitive in games where Deshaun Watson was actively sabotaging the offense. And now they have to replace that. Not just the X's and O's, but the belief system. Because as Cameron points out, they already saw what happens when you lose a great coach and replace him with someone who doesn't command the same respect. Bill Callahan left the offensive line coaching job to work with his son. Andy Dickerson took over. Same players, similar scheme, completely different results. The offensive line regressed drastically. That's the nightmare scenario Cleveland is trying to avoid on defense. Because if they get this hire wrong, if they bring in someone who doesn't understand the nuances of Schwartz's system or can't get the players to execute with the same intensity, they're not just losing a coordinator. They're potentially wasting an entire season of Myles Garrett's prime.
But then there's the internal candidates too, right? Jason Tarver and Ephraim Banda, who both obviously have been in the scheme. I think Jason Tarver in particular has a pretty solid understanding of what's going on up front, but Ephraim is a guy that has been desired. He was requested for a Jets interview. So they've got options of people who know kind of what it looks like in a Jim Schwartz defense, because that's what they want to keep without having Jim Schwartz here. But they also have other candidates externally that have a good understanding of the defense and a good understanding of football in Northeast Ohio, like a guy like Jonathan Cooley, who is from here, grew up here, played here, coached here, all these things. So I think they have a good candidate pool, and it will be up to them to determine in these interviews how much of an understanding, and maybe some of the tweaks, you don't want to get too far away, but everyone's going to bring their personal flair, their personal brand to it. You just don't want to stray too much. So if they can have that basic understanding and not see the regression, because the players are, for the most part, right, the same, the exact same players. You're going to get maybe added a couple players.
So who are the candidates? Cameron breaks down the internal options first. And this is where it gets interesting, because both have legitimate cases. Ejiro Evero, linebackers coach, highly respected by the players. Great defensive mind, communicates concepts clearly. The Jets requested an interview with him for their defensive coordinator opening, which tells you how the league views his potential. He's been in Schwartz's system. He understands the philosophy, and the players already trust him. But here's Cameron's observation. Evero operates on the quieter side. He's not the fiery, in-your-face presence that Schwartz was. That doesn't mean he can't be that guy. It just means it's a different leadership style. And when you're trying to fill the shoes of someone the defense genuinely loved playing for, personality matters. Then there's Jason Tarver, defensive line coach and linebackers coach. He's been a defensive coordinator before in the NFL, so he's already proven he can handle the responsibility. And here's what gives him an edge. He works directly with the engine of Schwartz's defense. Everything in that scheme starts up front. The defensive line creates chaos. The linebackers flow to the ball. And the secondary cleans up. Tarver has been coaching that chaos every single day. He knows exactly how to generate pressure, how to teach linemen to play with the violence and unpredictability that made Schwartz's defense so effective. And the linebacker room under his guidance has been tight-knit, physical and productive. Cameron says both have qualities that give them an edge. But notice what she's really saying. This isn't about who has the better resume on paper. It's about who can walk into that locker room and get grown men who love Jim Schwartz to buy into a new voice with the same intensity.
So staying with the theme of continuity, you mentioned Ephraim Banda and Jason Tarver. Now Jason has been a defensive coordinator before in the NFL. Ephraim Banda has had interviews to become a defensive coordinator this year. And I read somewhere that Ephraim was, rising in the ranks internally. Of those two guys in particular, who do you think has the edge to become the Browns' next defensive coordinator, and why?
It's a hard question, because I do think, I think there are different reasons why either one could surpass each other, right? Like, for that position, with Ephraim Banda, I think that he is so well respected. He has a really, really great defensive mind, and he's really able to relate what he's trying to coach to his players well. I think that is very well respected, and you want a guy, if you're going to hire a coach, you got to have a guy that can get guys bought in, especially when you lose a Jim Schwartz, who was...
But they're not limiting themselves to internal candidates. Corey Undlin is getting interviewed. He's been in systems similar to Schwartz's scheme, so there's familiarity with the concepts. John McVay is in the mix too, and he's got Cleveland connections, played here, coached here, understands the market and the pressure. And then there's Aubrey Pleasant, who Cameron mentions as another external option. These are guys who would bring fresh perspectives, but also have to prove they can maintain continuity with what Schwartz built. Here's the challenge Cameron identifies: you want someone with experience, someone who's done this before at a high level. But you also need someone who understands the specific nuances of Schwartz's scheme well enough that the players don't feel like they're starting over from scratch, because the players are the same. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Grant Delpit, Martin Emerson, these guys aren't changing. They spent a season executing Schwartz's vision at an elite level. They know what good defense feels like in this system. If the new coordinator comes in and tries to implement concepts that don't fit their skill sets, or asks them to play in ways that contradict what they just proved works, that's when regression happens. And regression on defense, for the Browns, means wasting another year of championship-caliber talent on that side of the ball, while the offense figures out whether Deshaun Watson can still play quarterback.
Better to go with somebody in-house, considering that you have a lot of young guys and they've already maybe built a relationship or rapport with the young guys, and that would maybe be better, considering you're going to have even more younger guys on the team going forward with so many draft picks?
I don't know if it's better. I think it's certainly a solid option, and I think it could be easier. But at the end of the day, internal or external, you got to get the guy that has the strongest understanding of what you're going to be able to do, with that added aspect of filling the shoes of Jim Schwartz and getting the buy-in. So you have to have somebody who's charismatic and is a leader. But those are things that obviously, so many of these guys, it's an attribute they have. That's what got them in the positions they're in. That's why they're interviewing. And if they hire them, it means they were charismatic and they showed that leadership quality. They showed that buy-in ability in the interview, because you got the front office and ownership and coaching staff and Todd Monken to buy in.
Now here's where Cameron makes a critical point about internal versus external hires. Would it be easier to promote from within? Absolutely. The players already have relationships with Evero and Tarver. There's built-in trust, built-in respect, and zero learning curve when it comes to understanding who these guys are as coaches and leaders. But Cameron doesn't say it would be better. She says it would be easier. And that's an important distinction, because easier doesn't always mean right. If John McVay or Corey Undlin or Aubrey Pleasant walks into that interview and demonstrates a deeper understanding of how to evolve Schwartz's scheme, how to make it even more effective, how to get more out of these players than they even got last season, then the fact that he's an external candidate becomes irrelevant. What matters is the interview. What matters is whether that coach can articulate a vision that excites Todd Monken and Kevin Stefanski and the front office. What matters is whether he can sell the players on buying in with the same intensity they bought into Schwartz. And Cameron points out something else that's crucial. These candidates, internal or external, had to sell themselves to get these interviews in the first place. They had to demonstrate charisma, leadership ability, and vision just to get in the room. So by the time they're sitting across from Monken, they've already proven they can make people believe in them. The question is whether that belief translates to the locker room. Because coaching in the NFL isn't just about scheme, It's about getting highly paid, veteran players to trust you enough to execute your vision with maximum effort every single snap.
With the pool they've got and the internal candidates, I think they are in a place where, okay, there's a clear level of how they can get the guys bought in. It's just what they're going to be able to say to them.
So that was Cameron Justice giving us a little insight in the process that the Browns is doing for us finding this new defensive coordinator. But something I'm liking about her style is that she's clearing up a lot of rumors. She's coming with facts. She don't sound like she's over hyping or overdoing too much. She's just speaking on what she know. I rock with her, bro. Get down in the comment section. Let me know y'all thoughts about this. Make sure you
watch Cameron's body language when she talks about the pool of candidates. She's confident. Not in a specific hire, but in the process. She believes the Browns have legitimate options, both internal and external, who can step into this role and maintain the defensive excellence Schwartz established. And that confidence matters because Cameron Justice isn't a hype person. She's not trying to sell hope to a desperate fan base. She's evaluating the situation the same way she evaluates everything based on what she sees every day at the facility. Based on conversations with people inside the organization, based on the track records of the coaches being considered. When she says the Browns have a good candidate pool, when she says they're in a position to hire someone who can keep the scheme without seeing regression, that's not speculation. That's informed analysis from someone who's been in that building watching these coaches work for years. So let's synthesize what we've learned here. Because this goes deeper than just the Browns filling a coaching vacancy. This is about organizational philosophy, about how you maintain excellence when the architect of that excellence walks away. Jim Schwartz resigned. He wasn't fired. He wasn't pushed out. He made a personal decision to step away from coaching, and he left behind a defense that overperformed relative to the offense's struggles. That defense kept Cleveland competitive in games they had no business being competitive in. That defense made Myles Garrett look like the defensive player of the year. That defense turned Grant Delpit into one of the most impactful safeties in football. Now Todd Monken has to replace him. And the approach Monken is taking tells you everything about how he views this job. He's not promoting the first internal candidate who raises his hand. He's not rushing to hire a big name just to make a splash. He's conducting a thorough process, interviewing multiple candidates, evaluating who has the best combination of scheme knowledge, leadership ability, and respect from the players. Because here's what Monken understands, the Browns' championship window is right now. Not in 2 years when Deshaun Watson's contract becomes more manageable. Not in 3 years when they've drafted and developed more young talent. Right now, they have an elite defense, they have playmakers on offense, and they're paying their quarterback $230 million guaranteed, whether he performs or not. That means every decision matters, every coaching hire has to be right. There's no room for developmental projects, no room for learning on the job, no room for hoping a coordinator grows into the role. You need someone who can step in on day one and command respect, teach the scheme, and get maximum effort out of players who just lost a coach they genuinely loved. The Bubba Ventrone replacement with Byron Storer shows Monken's philosophy. Don't just fill the position, upgrade it. Find someone with a proven track record, someone who's been successful in this role before. Someone who understands what elite execution looks like because they've coached it before. That same philosophy is driving the defensive coordinator search, whether it's Ejiro Evero bringing his respected voice and scheme knowledge from within, or Jason Tarver leveraging his experience coaching the defensive line that makes the whole system work, or an external candidate like Corey Undlin, or John McVay or Aubrey Pleasant, bringing fresh perspective with scheme familiarity. The standard is the same: proven excellence, immediate impact, no regression. And here's what makes this particularly challenging. They're not just replacing a coordinator, they're replacing a culture. Schwartz created an environment where defensive players believed in attacking, in being aggressive, in creating chaos rather than reacting to it. That mindset is what separated Cleveland's defense from the conservative play-not-to-lose defenses you see across the league. The new coordinator has to maintain that mindset while adding his own personality to it. He has to convince Myles Garrett that the defensive line will still be the engine. He has to convince Denzel Ward that the corners will still be asked to play aggressively in man coverage. He has to convince the linebackers that they'll still be flowing downhill with violence, rather than sitting back in zone. That's not something you can fake. Players know immediately whether a coach believes in what he's teaching. They know whether the scheme fits their skills. They know whether the energy and intensity match what they're used to. If any of those elements feel off, if the new coordinator comes in trying to implement concepts that don't align with what made this defense successful, the players will tune out. Not consciously, not intentionally, but it'll happen. We saw it with the offensive line. Bill Callahan leaves. Andy Dickerson takes over. Same players, similar scheme, completely different results. The offensive line went from being a strength to being a liability. Protection broke down, run blocking suffered, and suddenly an offense that was already struggling with quarterback play lost the foundation that was keeping it functional. The Browns cannot afford that same regression on defense. They cannot afford to waste a year of Myles Garrett playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level. They cannot afford to see Denzel Ward, who's being paid like a top 5 corner, suddenly look average because the scheme doesn't maximize his strengths. They cannot afford to watch Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, one of the most dynamic linebackers in football, get put in positions where his speed and instincts don't matter. That's the stakes of this hire, and Todd Monken knows it. That's why he's being thorough. That's why he's interviewing multiple candidates. That's why he's not rushing to make a splash hire just to satisfy fans who want an answer immediately, because the wrong hire costs you a season. And when you're paying Deshaun Watson $46 million per year, when you have an elite defense in place, when you have playmakers at receiver and running back, you don't get many seasons to waste. Every year that goes by without playoff success is another year of Myles Garrett's prime gone, another year of Denzel Ward's prime gone, another year closer to the end of this championship window. Cameron Justice understands this. That's why her analysis is so measured, so focused on the actual qualifications of the candidates, rather than the speculation and rumors that dominate sports media. She's not interested in telling you who's going to get hired. She's interested in explaining what the Browns are looking for, and why that criteria matters. And what they're looking for is clear. Someone who can maintain the defensive excellence Jim Schwartz established, someone who can get immediate buy-in from players who loved their previous coordinator, someone who understands the nuances of an aggressive attacking scheme, and someone who has the leadership presence to command respect from day one. Whether that person is Ejiro Evero, Jason Tarver, Corey Undlin, John McVay, Aubrey Pleasant, or someone else entirely, the standard is the same: proven excellence, immediate impact, no regression, because the Browns don't have time to develop a coordinator. They need someone who's ready to step in and maintain a top 10 defense, while the offense figures out its identity. That's the reality of where Cleveland is right now, and that's why this hire might be the most important decision Todd Monken makes in his first year running this organization. Get it right, and the Browns have a legitimate chance to compete in a wide-open AFC. Get it wrong, and you're looking at another season of wasted talent, another season of frustration, another season of wondering when this franchise will finally figure it out. So when Cameron Justice says the Browns have a good candidate pool, when she expresses confidence in the process, when she breaks down the specific qualities each candidate brings to the table, pay attention. Because she's not selling hope, she's providing informed analysis,